Hello and warm welcome. I hope you're all okay. Warm welcome if you're watching this on the replay as well. We're going to have a chat through this. This is my Everything Everywhere PC, and I just haven't gotten around to doing a full review of it. So I wanted to do a long-term review because I have now been using this as my Everything Everywhere PC. And there are lots of people like me who are using things like this. This is the GPD Win Max 2. And I wondered if this would happen live on air. So I'm going to just take a few moments because, yeah, this is one issue that I have had with it just lately, is that since I've had to use an EA game which wants secure boot protocol, I've had to actually every now and then, it's not every time, I've had to actually put in a BitLocker recovery key. So that is pretty frustrating, I must admit, especially for it to have happened just now. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to say warm welcome to you all, and I'm going to play a couple of my media assets because it's inputting a whole 16-digit key. So let's see if that takes me more than a minute. It's really great to see you. I'm fascinated by this little PC. It's a gamepad digital PC which has game controls built in as well as being an incredibly powerful little PC. So I'll go ahead and do that. I'll say warm welcome to you all. And by the way, I'm here later on as well tonight, and we're going to talk through some e-ink tablets and things then. So I will just be back in just a few short moments. Whilst I do that, go ahead and have a look at this intro here. Okay. Thanks so much for joining this stream. Make sure you check below and hit the like button, and make sure you're subscribed. The lights are on, the cameras are rolling, and we're ready to go live. So make sure you comment and ask as many questions as you can. That makes this experience better, and it lets the algorithm know that this is engaging, and so it goes ahead and invites other people into the stream as well. So thank you very much for making this channel what it is. Now let's compare some e-ink tablets. This hasn't worked this time, so I'm going to go ahead and restart that. So my apologies. This has been, I should just probably dump it and jump back out, but hello to you, warm welcome. But I'm going to carry on, and I'm going to be nice and chill about it all. I'm going to start that from scratch. I wonder why that didn't go in properly. It just stopped typing in, so I'm going to do that again. Now whilst I do that, then I'm really sorry, we're going to go ahead and do one more of these little videos here. I'll just do one of my very old members. I'll do the members one, why not? There we go, should be better. No. I just want to take a moment to talk about my membership offer. There are 3 tiers of membership. Firstly is the advanced view evaluators, and people love to see my videos before they go live to the public. The next tier is members only videos, and this year I'm increasing the number of members only videos that I put out each month. It's amazing to me that my channel is at the point where I can't respond to every single comment that I get. I try my best to get around to as many as I possibly can, but as a member in any tier, I'll always respond to your questions first. And I do know that many of you have questions about your specific use case. And the last tier is my office only tiers, where I'll offer you a call every quarter if you join that tier. So you can discuss and get advice about which one might suit you, but also how you can integrate these into your work life. I really appreciate that many of you want to support the channel in this way, and this is just a bit more than giving a super thanks on a live stream. So thank you once again. There we go. We do now have the GPD screen, and we're actually rolling. Right. I mean, how do you feel about that? That was a bit of a frustrating one, I must admit. It's been frustrating, and basically since I wanted to try out some really up-to-date games, and we'll talk about them a little bit in this stream. I wanted to try out Battlefield 6, which of course is a really popular game at the minute. Most of the rest of the time I'm playing things like Counter-Strike, really. If I'm playing anything, I'm not a major gamer. Don't expect all, you know, the best gaming review, but there's something about this which has really switched me on and has really got me a bit more into gaming recently, and I really like that this can be very easily converted from a little gamepad, a little handheld PC, into something which is more at home in a professional setting like this. And today we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about the future for Gamepad Digital. This is my long-term review of this, which is the GPD Win Max 2 2025 edition. And I have the Ryzen 9 HX 370 in here. And I do really, really like it. I don't think it's that expensive for what it is, to be honest. And these Win Maxes can be had from £960, but this particular model with, well, it's not currently available on the website with 64 gigabytes, but I bought it for 1,000. It's now a little bit more than that, I guess, because of the RAM shortage. It does have super fast RAM, and it is really, really good. I bought this back in May, and I have loved using it. I bought it to fill a little bit of a gap in my computing, which was generally video editing, whilst I was getting quite frustrated with the PC I had then. And I thought, can I actually live with video editing here on this small screen? And okay, it's not perfect. Of course, for video editing, you do want a lot more real estate than this. But I spent plenty of time just chopping away on this 10-inch little screen here. And for me, the question has been, could I actually live with this? Is this an acceptable thing to use for the long term? And yeah, it really is. And I can see now why so many people are using computers like this. They are computers, handheld computers that they may be plugging in and docking when they need that bit more power, when they need when they need extra screens and things like that, or just managing to use this as an everyday little laptop. And you can see if I go here, I've got a workspace for basic 10-inch cutting, which I just essentially, I do a lot of edits initially just on here with my keyboard shortcuts, and you can see 4K video, 3 streams of 4K video layered together there. And what I'll often do is I'll have a mouse, and if I'm just running it on the battery power like this, then I will use a little desktop replacement. This is this thing from PunCube, portable laptop desk, and that just sits on my lap essentially. And so I have room for a mouse next door to my keyboard, which you might be familiar. That's a very familiar setup for first-person shooters, but it's also a familiar setup for video editing. So you've got keyboard shortcuts and you've got mouse here as well. So for me, that's been absolutely brilliant. You can see 4K video just stopping and starting, scrubbing through whilst it's on battery power really, really quickly. So this, I'm not going to focus massively on the specs today, but I will just go through them very quickly. The specs of this particular one is HX 370. That's a Ryzen 9, and it is 64 gigabytes of RAM. Now, importantly, the way that this 890M graphics card, the iGPU, which is built into that, the way that that works is you can actually apportion a certain amount of that 64 gigabytes of RAM to the graphics card. It's unified RAM essentially. And so what I've done is I've chosen to give 16 gigabytes of that RAM to the graphics card and use just 48 for the rest of the computer. And actually it runs incredibly smoothly. If I go ahead and show you the performance graphs here, whilst I scrub through some footage, you can see it manages very, very well. Now this is pretty tough, and my computer, my desktop before that, you can see that the GPU shot up, but it's actually managed it. The CPU is just absolutely fine. The GPU is doing a nice bit of work there to make sure this runs smoothly. Scanning the footage. And because we've got all that extra RAM, if I want to load up Photoshop at the same time, we're using the 7.6. If I want to load up Photoshop at the same time, or indeed export things in the background whilst I use Photoshop to do a thumbnail, it can work really well to do that. That's my use case of it. And then the nice thing is, once I've done that, I will then fire up Counter-Strike, and actually you get a really nice experience just relaxing a little bit with a few rounds of Counter-Strike after having done some editing. And for me, there's kind of like 3 different setups for this. There's fully battery powered, which is on now. And with battery power, you can see it will be on an 18-watt TDP. So you can change and you can control how much it will use, how much power it will use. It's still scrubbing through footage, so it did slow down a little bit there. Let's have a look at the graphs now. You can see the CPU, still absolutely fine there. The memory is still loads of headroom there in the memory. The GPU did a lot of work there. But whilst it's on battery power, you can see at the minute I'm on a 28-watt TDP. So it's actually changed that because it can go up to 18, but I can tell it to slow down. I can tell it to go on to a 5-watt, and you can hear the fans slow down now. Okay, so you can control really finely between the two, and it had chosen, because normally it lives on an 18-watt TDP when it's not plugged in. So that's my sort of basic use case. And incidentally, you can change that with a button on the keyboard. I don't really do that very often. I just pretty much leave it on 18 for battery power, and it's just fine. Will you get a long time out of it? And that's one of the issues with it in that battery power mode. I get about 2 hours, a little bit more maybe if I'm video editing. I'll get about an hour and a half if I'm, going into Counter-Strike. And let's have a look at the settings that I'm running here. Yeah, it's 1440p, essentially, or 1600 vertically. So it's quite a lot of pixels for it. And I tend to run this in kind of medium on here. And if I just start a practice match, let's see what we get. At 1440p, you should see it's absolutely fine. And I've still got all of that software loaded up in the background. See, I'm getting 60 frames a second there, and 1440p medium on Counter-Strike. Not really seeing any slowdown. Okay, it did drop down to about 40 there. The lowest I've had is 34 now. So maybe, yeah, okay, maybe 1080p would be better actually. Killed by a bot on a live stream. It's terrible. Okay, but the point is, you can then, why am I expecting it to do better than that? Because if you plug it in, it will then go up to as high as a 54-watt TDP. That's this mode here. And when you're on that, then actually you'll get even higher out of your graphics card, and you'll actually hit that 60 frames a second reliably. So for me, it's a do everything PC, and it is absolutely amazing. I mean, it is definitely powerful. This live stream is not going to be about how powerful the PC is. You can see there we did boost up quite a bit on the GPU there. But I did have all those stuff running in the background. And what you can also do, the third option, so I've got this battery powered on the lower TDP, the third option, plug it in and you get the higher power rating, which I think is really good. It tends to run a bit smoother. If I'm running, and incidentally, that entire time I was playing that game, the Premiere Pro was actually playing its 4K footage in the background. So no wonder it was dipping below where it was. It's pretty impressive, right? We're not disputing that this is a powerful little PC, but is it the right thing? Is it the right thing to use it everywhere? Or are there actually some annoying bits that you actually only find when you live with it for a long time? And I think, yeah, I still absolutely love this thing. Do I still love this computer? Yes, I certainly do. I will talk a little bit later on about what I think they should do next time, but it it feels slightly stupid. It really sold me when I plug this into my TV and I can play games like Final Fantasy or Forza, and that is like in 4K, and I'm still getting sort of 40 50 frames per second on that big TV. And for single player games, you know, you can accept that. Sure, for multiplayer games and things, you might want to go to the higher stuff. And that's an interesting thing. I've enjoyed this so much that it's got me back into a little bit of that gaming. And I find that it's just such a nice little package to be able to do all of these things in one. It's about having Windows power, Windows software, that muscle memory of just working through a Windows PC that many of us have. It's about just having that in this tiny little form factor that I can chuck it into my scruffy bag, which we call the daddy bag in my family, which is just like a rucksack that carries everyone's drinks and everyone's you know, spare socks or whatever we need on any day out, and it can just get chucked in there. It fits in the little center console of my car, you know, where the like sort of glove compartment thing in the middle, in between the passenger seat and the driver's seat. And you know, it's just about having that ability to do those things everywhere. What other accessories do I use with it? Almost always carry a little power pack. And the little power pack means that I can essentially go into that higher speed mode if I need to, the higher power mode, because of course, when you plug it into a battery pack like this, that'll do that, I'll do at least 54 watts, but these have got 100 watt outputs. I'll carry that around and I can go into that higher performance mode wherever I am. I've said about the little lap dock, and it will charge, of course, with any power delivery cable. And then the third mode, I don't know if I've got onto that. The third mode is to dock it with one of these, which is the eGPU. And GPD, almost in a lot of their PCs, at least recently, they've included the Oculink cable, which is a very, very cool thing. So Oculink is essentially a direct PCIe connection. So when you connect into the GPD G1, which has in it a 7600M XT with 8 GB of VRAM there, when it has this Oculink connection into the back of the PC there, you've essentially now got something which really feels and performs like, it's the Oculink one there, really feels and performs like a desktop PC, and a good one at that. So I find it, you know, you can take it and use the same workflow that I'm used to. And the workflow that I have, you know, that enables me to put out videos so quickly is to get the videos quickly edited in Premiere Pro, export that. As I'm exporting that, I'm in Photoshop making the thumbnails up, and yeah, it's all very quick and smooth with this, and it feels just like I am at home. What I take with me is I'll take with me just, if I've got an Android tablet with me, I'll take that and run Space Desk, or sometimes I'll just connect my phone to the computer with a extra cable, and I can run Space Desk wired that way, and that will give me just maybe just a little video monitor so I can see a larger preview. Or indeed, I'll use these guys, the X-Real glasses, which are very good as well, which are 1080p, but they can actually do an ultra wide, or now they can do a 16 by 18, so a sort of double height 1080p screen. So you've got just a lot more screen real estate here. And actually that's a very comfortable situation. And I did that when I went to IFA last year in September. I was there in the evenings. I wanted to be able to put out videos quickly from the day that I was there, and I was able to put out videos like contemporaneously, like as they happened, almost sort of in the evenings. I was able to sit and edit, and then also to be able to sit and relax with a little bit of gaming here and there. So I think it's great. I mean, it's been a bit of an experiment, but it's got there. So what do you guys think of that? I've got a few other sort of key takeaways and points to make about it, and some kind of common questions, but fire in the chat by all means any questions you have about the little PC, and we can talk through them as well. For me, it's about sort of exploring different habits. You know, actually, can you work in those places? And yes, I've found that you can. It's not a laptop. It's not a handheld though either. But I actually don't think that it's really falls into the category. If you just wanted a handheld gaming PC, I wouldn't recommend to go with this. I actually find that the holding onto those whilst it's chugging away at its full power, they actually get quite hot holding onto the controllers at the stem there. So I would find that, you know, probably a smaller handheld with the things either side, probably without the processor right behind there, without the fans and the exhaust right behind there, probably better for a handheld. But what it is a laptop which is almost full size, which can be used as a gaming PC if needed. That's the sort of place that I would see it. And it's not big enough to go on the lap on its own. It actually, if you put it on your lap, it kind of almost falls in between. You've got to sit your legs a bit uncomfortably there, but on a little lap desk like this, it's quite nice actually. And then you can have a full-size mouse just sitting to the side of it, which I actually quite like that setup there. I had a lot of questions from earlier things, and I think that, okay, this PC isn't the only PC that I can have. This PC isn't the only PC that I use. I've got the big desktop here for my live streaming, for my main video editing, you know, big powerful desktop. And I often actually use the PC I gave to my wife, which just sits around the house because it's a really nice laptop with a Snapdragon X processor in it. Windows on ARM is just nice and easy to use. I think it's a 14-inch PC so it's that bit bigger, very light, nice and comfortable actually on your lap. But I would still have this as a sort of in-between. I've got the laptop just for simple office tasks, little bits of living in a browser, buying this or that, organizing this and that, writing some Word documents maybe. PC for the more powerful stuff, the desktop. And actually this thing, which can fill those gaps in between, where I actually, if I'm traveling and I want that power, or if I'm wanting to use it handheld, wanting to use something very mobile. So I really like it for that. And it's been durable, it's been useful. I'm going to just got some other questions to come back to, but although I still have those other two PCs in my life, and I would definitely have that sort of mixture of three, this is, if I could only have one of those three, this is the one I would choose, because you can still have that portability and you've got that power. So what about all the kind of questions people often have about it then? What about the battery life? Well, the battery life I've found to be quite fine. I was worried I wasn't going to get more than sort of an hour of video editing, but actually on battery power at the lower TDP, I have actually got up to about 2.5 hours. And using a battery pack like so, it just means you can sort of have that session again. So that's been fine. Does it get too hot? There's another question that is often asked about these. I would say for long periods holding handheld, if you're running it, you know, if you're running it plugged in at the 54 watt TDP, then yes, it possibly does. But actually at a lower power for sort of more casual gaming, then actually that's just fine. It doesn't get too bad at all. Is it too loud? I don't know. Actually, during this live stream in this video so far, it's kicked up to some really high powers, and you can actually change that. If it does get too loud, you can quickly cut the fan there. You'll obviously lose a bit of performance, but you can cut the fan with just one keystroke. So does it get too loud? Yeah, it's really incredibly loud when it's on its highest power. Is it too loud? I'm not sure about that. Again, though, you've got the GPD G1, the eGPU, the external graphics card, actually has a low power mode, a quiet mode. So you can actually put it into that if you are finding it to be offensively loud, or you can have the fans run quite loud. Now, will it run AAA games? And this is one question. You know, will it actually, I've opened up Counter-Strike backs in there. I'm going to close down this time. I'm going to close down the other Adobe software that I've got. I don't need to save that just now. I haven't done anything with it. And I'm going to close down Counter-Strike as well. And the game that I think is sort of most challenging at the minute is Battlefield 6, isn't it? And that's a question that lots of people have: is will it run the top level games? And yes, it will, but with some caveats. Now, one criticism people have of this is it's a 60 hertz screen. Now, it's a 1600p, so that kind of QHD level screen. But let's load that up. But it's only 60 hertz. Now, that is an issue for it, really, because lots of people would take frame rate over resolution, and they've gone here resolution rather than frame rate. But in these games like Battlefield 6, you're rarely going to be able to, the AAA games, you're rarely going to be able to get higher frame rates than that. And actually on battery power, I did this for a little while. I was using X-Real glasses, so they're 1080p, and I was getting 1080p sort of mid settings. It looked amazing still, looked absolutely amazing still. But 1080p mid settings on the single player mode, I was getting sort of 40s, 50s and 60s frame rates. So that's what you're really going to expect just now. We'll see what we get here as we just run for it. But you know, does it is it comfortable to use? Is it comfortable to type on? It's a little bit cramped, a little bit less space than you would really want. But generally, that hasn't frustrated me. I'm not tending to do long sessions of typing on it anyway, but just generally forgetting about and using the keyboard for editing a few documents and searching and things like that is actually quite a good keyboard. And then when you dock it in, you can see I've got my keyboard dongle there in the docking station, and I can plug that in over here with a 4K screen and Keychron. This is a Hall effect keyboard. You know, you can do those things. There it is. It's actually loading in the background there. So, you know, I did wonder when I got it, is it going to be something that I love initially, and then when the novelty wears off, will it actually not stick with me? And I've found that, yeah, it definitely has stuck with me, and I have really still enjoyed it. And that's odd because that normally just works fine. So let's give that a bit of a rest. I'll get a couple of questions if you've got any more questions. I still have my first gen GPD Win Max. I love it and I've used it a lot. My only regret that I went with only 16 gigabytes of RAM, yeah. And back then it felt okay, but now minimum is 32 gigabytes of RAM is what I need to work. Yeah, absolutely. The you know, this one, I went for the 64 just because I knew it would do that thing that you've noticed there, which is have it be sort of future proof. And I think that's definitely worth considering when you get any kind of PC. And one thing I think that future-proofs the RAM on this is that it's that 8,000 speed RAM. So it's incredibly fast RAM. I think that it's really, really good. So we'll have a look at this in just a little moment. It's looking pretty sharp there, actually. But I'll just let that camera have a little rest. Obviously overheated. That can happen at times. And then we'll get back with this. I do think, you know, this device kind of exists because you want one proper device which you can use as a portable handheld thing, but then it doesn't collapse when you actually ask it to do proper work. And I guess that's what you're finding with the 16 gigabytes of RAM with the first one that you've got. And I think, honestly, I think if GPD made like a 13-inch version of this, I think that it would sell really, really well. I think actually you can see it's not a thin and light laptop. It's quite light, but it's not super thin. They've actually packed in plenty of space to do proper cooling on it. And that's what's enabling it to do so well. But I think if they did something that was just the same sort of form factor, but a 13-inch screen, I think they could do really, really well. Let's have a little fire through. Let's see if we can get this going again. Yep, that's fine. Let's start that one again. Okay, so let's see what we get here. And this is, this is demanding. This is a demanding game here. You can see even just in this cut screen, we're getting 20 frames per second. Constantly trying to sell you things, new games, aren't they? So this is battery power. So we're on that. Let's check. We're on that 18 watt TDP. So let's push that as far as you can on the battery power, 28 watt. And go for graphics. Graphics quality will go down to low. And we'll see what we can get at the native resolution of the screen. Here, 1600p essentially. And then I just go X to apply, keep the changes, and then back. And I know it's not going to really push it, but let's just so we don't go in and out anyone's multiplayer. So that's 30 frames a second essentially now, which is, that's okay for single player, but really you want something smoother. And it's a case, I don't know if you've used a lot of this, but 30 frames a second is kind of okay for single player stuff. But if you want to play anything kind of competitive, then you're going to want to go up to a higher frame rate than that. And when you actually had higher frame rates, you'll find that it's more difficult to go back. So you probably are going to want to drop it down to 1080p and maybe even low. So let's see what we get when we do that. It was on low, sorry. So let's see if we can get higher than that when we're on 1080, or let's do 1080, why not? And then go to that same. Now it's 50 frames a second, and that for single player is going to be absolutely fine. And that's what I was going with when I was using the X-Reel, and it's fine. It's good. It's good for single player, but possibly AAA game like Battlefield, okay, brand new, perhaps that's pushing it on its battery mode. If you're to plug it in though, you will get a higher frame rate there. And certainly if you were to plug it into the graphics card, you're going to end up going up to 1440p and hitting that 60 frames a second if you like, or 1080p will get you something that's really quite smooth in all different modes in demanding settings. So I think that's the way to go. So it's not full-on desktop performance, but it is very good for a handheld. Okay, let's come out of this now. So any more questions, do fire them in. I'm gonna just move on to the next part of the question here. What about what are they going to do next? What do you think they're going to actually do next, GPD? That's the interesting thing there. A couple of things, other things that I've noted on my time using it. I've read about things like feeling like it's vibrating and rumbling through the chassis. I haven't found that at all. I actually find the controls pretty comfortable actually to use. They're quite nice. Apart from that slight bit of heat, and then I will actually set the thing down. And because it's heavier than an average handheld, I'll set the thing down and I will use an actual gamepad. Anything else that I haven't covered yet? Yeah, I think the 60 frames a second is an often mentioned complaint about the thing. Yeah, just to mention as well that they actually advertised this. They were going to put in a 4G module here, and although you can get a 4G module from them, it isn't the little open that up and just plug it in card that they really kind of advertised and expected. Actually, to put in a 4G module, so I didn't bother doing it in the end. Actually, the thing is you have to take the whole back off, and you have to take the whole thing out and actually take some of the components out to actually fit in the 4G module. So it's not the smooth thing that they were expecting. There is an extra SSD though in the back, which is really useful because it allows you, certainly when you're running Photoshop and Premiere and things like that, you can actually be using the C drive as your scratch disk, and you can be using the second drive as your actual files and things like that. So I find that really good to have that extra graphics card as well. What I'd love to see them experiment with would be some actual dedicated GPU laptops as well. Cool. Your thoughts then? A couple of things for me to look over. I also wonder why they haven't done a 395 version of the Win Max 2, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Yeah. So there was a GPD Duo, which is 13-inch. I believe that's now stopped production. Yeah, this is what I wonder about them. Why did they make the GPD Duo and not make a GPD just 13-inch one? It would have seemed to me to be a bit of a kind of obvious thing to do, would be to, if you're making a 13-inch laptop chassis with 2 screens, why not also go ahead and make a 13-inch laptop full stop? I did wonder that. I would love to do an SDX2 Elite model, yes, so Snapdragon X2 Elite model. Perhaps beyond gaming, but focus on productivity on that side. It could be really thin without standing battery life. Yeah, I would love to do that. Anyone else use the Snapdragon processors? They're good. I think they're excellent for office and things like that. And I've given the one that I bought and reviewed to my wife because it's just got great battery life. It opens and wakes up in seconds, and it's just great for living in a browser and doing the stuff that she does using Office and email and stuff like that. The only thing I would say, the only caveat about those Snapdragon X processors is every now and then she'll come through and she'll say, oh, it's not running this program. And I'll have to remind myself how to find productivity mode in the properties of that app, and actually not productivity, sorry, compatibility mode. So I'll have to go and find out how to put that app into compatibility mode, and then it'll work just fine. And it actually works, you know, emulating x86 just fine. It's powerful enough to do that. But yeah, I think it's a really great device there. I think that certainly some Windows on ARM devices would make sense for them to look at next. So, but I think the acid test of whether this long-term review, whether this has really hit the expectations that I had of it, the acid test is probably if I lost it or it got stolen, would I buy it again? And I think I definitely would. I might be tempted to wait and see what GPD do next and look what a Win Max 3 would be like before I actually go ahead and do that, because surely they're going to go ahead and replace this in just a few short weeks and months, I guess. A few short months I would probably expect. Surely there must be something coming from them in the next generation Win Max 4. We will see. I'm going to just have a little bit of a tiny pause just to get myself some water, stop me losing my voice, and then we'll carry on and we'll talk about that. What will a Win Max 4 look like? And I'd love to hear from you guys what you think. What you think a Win Max 4 might look like. Thanks so much for being here and spending time with me on this live stream. I really enjoy engaging with you guys and answering your questions live. It's a massive support to me. Now, if you do decide that one of the devices that I review here on my channel is for you, then go ahead and check the links in the description, because when you make a purchase through a YouTuber's affiliate links, you make it possible for us to keep making content for you. So as I said, I wonder why they haven't yet made a HX 395 plus the AI Max chip version of this. I did think that would make sense, really. I think Strix Halo, the iGPU, would sort of change the whole system here. The only problem with that would be that then you would have, you'd need a bigger battery or accept worse battery life, and you'd probably have a more noisy machine, and actually it would be more power intensive as well. It might be that actually even then you'd struggle to have something you could actually hold and not be too hot for that. So it's interesting where those devices are going into. They're more going into tablet and mini PC type things. those Ryzen AI Max. But that has a 16-core CPU, and the AI Max 395 has almost, I think all of those are performance cores. They're like, well, certainly more of them are performance cores, whereas this thing I think has just 4 performance cores and the rest are efficiency cores, and the Ryzen 9 excuse me, the Ryzen 9 HX 370. But importantly, it's got a 40 graphics core processor, the graphics processor. The iGPU in the 395 Max Plus is 8060S iGPU with 40 graphics cores. And then the 385 has got an iGPU with 32 graphics cores. So you've got some, in that AI Max series of chips, you've got some really powerful graphics cards, which are above this thing, which has itself got a really powerful graphics card as well. So I think that would be a, you know, an obvious thing for them to do. But actually, will the next one, will the right chip for the Win Max 3 be a be the 400 series? It might well be. The 470 HX is now out, and it's in some machines already. That's the first that AMD have released of their 400 series chips, and I think that would make sense really for them to put into the next one. It's an interesting one though, really interesting one. Will they also, perhaps they would also go into the Intel Panther Lake processors? Intel are on their 300 series now, so it's not at all confusing, is it? And those apparently have good graphics, which are almost as good as that that AMD iGPU that we've just been talking about, but they are supposedly lighter on the efficiency side. So maybe that's an option for them to explore. And as they work with Geekom, and Geekom I know are already putting those Panther Lake chips into laptops and into mini PCs, then that would make sense. Why not? Geekom, I think what Geekom do is essentially design the motherboard layouts and things like this for GPD. So GPD are focused exclusively on getting the gamepad side of things working, and what they need is a solution to actually fit in all of the hardware into their designs, and that's where Geekom help them out, and they work with Geekom. They aren't officially the same brand or part of the same umbrella company, I don't think, but they do work together, and more on that in a moment, because I think that might be telling what GPD might actually do. So some nice bits and bobs in the chat. I'll just have a quick look at. We've gone for that one. I have an old 8CX Gen 3 for the Elite versions in a Robo and Kala tablet. Yes, I wanted to look at those at one point. That's like Robo and Kala tablets are a little bit like Surfaces, aren't they? It's the device I used to work on the go, and Windows has come a long way. Yeah, it certainly has. Given the Win Max 2 has 4 hardware revisions now, I'm not sure we will see a Win Max 3 or 4. Yeah, or whether the Win Max 3 actually looks quite different to this. I wonder, I mean, what I would love to see a Win Max 3, we just give that little bit more room, even if it only went up to like 11, 12-inch size, that little bit more room so that actually the keyboard was just full size, you know, just full size from Q to P for typing. You can get away with having slightly slimmer side keys, really, but the sort of main typing area, if they could just be full size, it's just about a centimeter short of being full size, which is just enough to put you off really from what you're used to. But that's an interesting point, because this was called the Win Max 2 2025. So will we just see a Win Max 2 2026? I wonder. That's an interesting point. Thank you, Fish, I guess. Excuse me. I think they need to slow down on some of the hardware releases until they nail the support aspect. Yeah, so people have mentioned about the support. I personally have had no issues. I talked and showed that at the start of the stream, the issue with the BIOS update. You know, I had to change the BIOS to do secure boot in order to run EA games. So there we go. And in doing so, I think I've invited in that issue. I could tell it to stop encrypting the drive, I guess, but I don't want to do that. I want the thing to be encrypted. So there's that. Recently bought a Win Max 2, concerned about the equipment to support and release devices. Yeah, I mean, I haven't had any reason to contact support just yet. So I can't answer you on that one just yet, but that is something that people have mentioned. Okay, so what else? So what else might they do? I think they almost certainly will do. They must know this is the case, that actually 60 hertz panel, and I don't know why. I mean, why they didn't really need to make it a touchscreen, I think, or did they? What do you think? Do you use the touchscreen much on yours? I don't think they needed to make it a touchscreen. And there's very occasional times, I guess, because you've only got this tiny little trackpad. I guess there's occasional times when I'm like, well, actually, I just close that window like that rather than bother to move the mouse up to it. But to be honest, those times are few and far between. Incidentally, I have, and I do use hardware monitor, for example, to monitor thermals whilst I do certain things to find out about it, and I find the thermals to be really quite stable. And people talk about, you know, I've never seen a red in hardware monitor here in all the time that I've been using it. So I think that that's certainly for my copy, certainly for my machine, it's been absolutely fine in terms of the thermals there as well. But I do think, yeah, so they wouldn't have needed to do a touchscreen, but they surely know that 60 hertz is not what people expect in their gaming handhelds. And really that invites me to put it into the TV. The TV goes up to 120, or into a 4K monitor like this one, which does 144. And, you know, even I think that would make sense, really. Yeah, okay, so this is called BIOS updates appear to be a pain point. I wonder if a BIOS update, if maybe there might be one which will solve that issue that I've just had a few times there. Not only touch, but even compatible with a stylus. And again, for gaming PC, is it something you want a stylus particularly for? I could see it if it also had the twist, and maybe the next Win Max 2 will go that way. But they do have small form factor laptops that do actually twist and then fold down, so it's in sort of tablet mode. I can see that, I suppose, but I just don't think that this is going to be a choice. I think that rather than that, go to 120 hertz panel as a minimum. You know, really even higher than that would probably get people to go like, wow, that's really good. Make it variable refresh rate. I don't think they need to go for OLED, you know, but it just might complicate things about power and heating and things like that. So I just think maybe they could give you config options rather than just do that as well. So screen choice is limited, but not sure who make this panel. I think they've said no one is providing access to sub 14-inch screens with high refresh rates, but it must be the case that because there's a lot of handhelds out there which have the higher refresh rate screens. I think I could easily be wrong, of course. Not sure if newer models have variable refresh rate due to the lack of power. I put mine in 40 hertz mode to prevent a lot of tearing on in games. Yeah, just one thing I found just having looked at Battlefield 6 there. No, sorry, I was on Counter-Strike, just testing things out to make sure I had the right settings before this stream. you wouldn't know it, would you, necessarily? But I saw that I was getting some screen tearing in Counter-Strike, and actually all it was I just didn't have the VSync on. And once I put the VSync on, it was fine. So the thing is, I think we're kind of hinting at this really, it's the Max identity. What is the Max identity? Is it a handheld or is it a tiny laptop with controls? And I would love to see them go down this route. This is what I would suggest that they do. If you or they want my 2 cents, I think this would make an absolutely banging computer. I would go up to about the sort of 12-inch sort of size, so a little bit bigger. And I would make sure I had a full-size keyboard. Probably the trackpad would come down, and I would have 2 docked magnetic controllers, a bit like Switch controllers that clip together, or you can hold side by side like this. I would go down that route rather than, and then they just, rather than have these magnetic coverings, just have something which literally slides in and docks in there. Of course, that's going to make the whole thing be thicker than a ordinary laptop, but I just don't think in this kind of format, I don't think having it slightly thick is an issue. I actually don't think that I actually, for people who are going to buy this, they're going to care more about cooling and having proper fans and things like that, rather than have it being super slim and light. And I think people, certainly if they knew that it's thick like that because you've got these docked game pads, I think people would absolutely still go for that. But then, you know, that would allow it to go, you know, maybe up to the sort of power limits of the 395 Plus. Maybe having that slightly larger thing would allow even more beefy cooling and things for those extra things there. I do also think then they're going to have the issue of what to do about powering it. And right now, of course, it's got a normal laptop style battery inside it, an internal battery that's charged by the USB 4. Either of the two USBs at the back here can charge it. The other one can be used for a display out if needed, or any kind of keyboard, video, and mouse. But I wonder about putting modular batteries. So rather than carry around an extra battery pack, I would actually carry around a battery that could slot into the back, perhaps. Right now with the GPD Win 5, which has that 395, they've actually gone for a fully modular external battery. And so you can actually take the battery off entirely and run it from a cable. So you're only holding the thing without a battery, and the battery is sitting in your bag or in a pocket or something like this. Or you can clip the battery onto the back. And I don't like that idea of having it sort of clipping on externally, but something that can easily just be swapped out. And I think something would be cool if it was like hot swappable, maybe like I saw the Rug One X Ever one, it was called, where you could actually take the battery out. I know it's a phone, and it's probably easier to do that on a, excuse me, it's probably easier to do that on an Android device, much lower power device, than it is on a laptop. But actually imagine being able to take the battery out and have it hot swappable, so it can actually stay in the same state, even if it had to go down to a lower power just whilst you swap that out. I think that'd be really cool. So yeah, the other options, 11.6 inch, 13.3 inch could be quite good, I think. I think for people like me, that's in high demand. For people who actually want to buy a handheld, of course, that's not in high demand at all. And it wouldn't be a handheld if, as I'm saying, you take the controllers out. But I think something like that for, you know, for somebody's using it for productivity, video editing, creator laptop and gamer laptop, like me, I think that would be a really good answer, having that larger size. I'd love to see what they would do in laptops, really. It would be really, really cool. I certainly think they ought to keep the whole, you can cover up the controllers. I do think that appeals to a lot of people. It certainly appealed to me, not because you need that, not because I accidentally hit those controls. I do accidentally hit these ones on the back quite a bit. But, you know, at least they're there for if you'd need them in any particular game. I've put these in the wrong way around, so they're now harder to get out. But these little covers, they are, you know, they're certainly worth having, just because it's quite nice to just remind yourself you're not in relaxing mode, you're in working on your video mode, you're in whatever you need to do mode. I do think they're quite cool. So having having them covered up is quite good. I definitely keep them. So yeah, I would love to see that kind of modular battery though. I'd love to see the modular sort of what do you call them, controllers. And actually, if you did that, actually you give yourself two bays which can actually have different types of modular I/O. And you look at what Framework have done really, and they've exploited essentially having some little recessed USB-C ports. Then they've got a whole universe of what they called like port adaptions, basically. Let's have a look. The little slot in bits that can go into the side. So you can change whatever I/O it is, these things. USB-C expansion cards. Let's grab a quick drink. And I think that would actually, you know, you could actually do a whole load of different I/O, and they've already done GPD. they've already done quite a bit of different expansion cards, and it's in the Win Mini, is it? Or the Pocket 3, maybe? I think it's the Pocket, actually, where you can actually, yes, let's have a look at the Pocket 4, where it actually has bits you can screw out on the back, so you can change it from an Ethernet port to a HDMI, for example, whatever you might need. And actually, if you had 2 spaces to dock the little cards, you could do that. That'd be quite cool, wouldn't it? And modular I/O would be quite cool as well. And also in the Win Max 5, they've got the little slot-in SSDs, the little SSDs that look essentially like SD cards. But rather than have to actually, unscrew the back here, you could actually just have the little slot-in SSDs. Would be quite cool as well. And certainly for me, where if I fill up an SSD, I'm like, right, what's next then? Actually to be able to take out the SSD really quickly and just have that would be quite cool. I think just building 4G or 5G rather would be quite cool as well, rather than have that slot in like the idea was. So yeah, 5G would be a really cool thing to see as well. So what about Oculink? This is probably the biggest debate. Do you think they should do Oculink in the next generation? Or do you think actually if you go for USB 4 V2, that's good enough? Or do you think, that USB 4 V2 is basically Thunderbolt 5? Do you think actually you still want to see the full Oculink port? And I think this GPU they've made answers that question a little bit, whether they will do it or whether they should, because the eGPU has Oculink, but it also has Thunderbolt 4. And when I run this connected, I run it with the Oculink and the Thunderbolt 4 connected. So the Thunderbolt 4 is charging, and it's carrying the keyboard and any of the other peripheries, any data that I might have in it as well. And then the Oculink is just running the GPU, and that's running it directly into the PCIe lanes, really. And that's the thing. If you run it at Thunderbolt 5 or USB 4 V2, then it's going to be sort of always trading off. Now, although on paper, Thunderbolt 5 has 80 gigabits per second, whereas Thunderbolt 4 has only 40, and the Oculink has 64 on paper, I think that actually 64, the Oculink will probably give you a more stable and dedicated GPU connection, whereas a Thunderbolt port of any kind will always be kind of trading off and sending data forwards and backwards, and not just really giving you that kind of one way, right, is ready for the graphics, put it out to the monitor. That's the way that Oculink will work. So I think they'll do that. And I think they'll also do that to maintain compatibility, because they'd annoy quite a lot of people, wouldn't they, if they put out a new laptop, a new gaming handheld, a new Win Max 2, Win Max 3, whichever, and they didn't put in Oculink, then people would be like, well, now I have to run my eGPU at USB 4 speeds, and it's not going to be quite the product that I maybe thought it was when I bought it, that I maybe invested in. So I think they will stick with Oculink. What do you guys think? However, saying that, I do with other PCs have used this GPU with the USB 4, and it's almost as fast. It really isn't much of a penalty to go down from the Oculink. What do you guys think? To Oculink or not? I think it's quite a question for them, really. I'll get a couple of questions in just a moment, though. The other thing about Oculink, though, is it's not hot swappable. I've had no issues with that. I've accidentally plugged it in while they've both been on, and it's not broken the thing at all. It just hasn't recognized that it's there, essentially. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Questions? No need for 16 cores in the gaming device. 8 would be more than enough. Yeah, it is more than enough, absolutely. But I think for other things like if we're saying this is going to be your everything PC, certainly those cores are definitely in use when I'm video editing. They are definitely being addressed and used quite a lot. The thing that isn't being used at all is the NPU. I mean, what a waste of time those are currently. They only really get used when you use Copilot if you've got that enabled on, if you've gone ahead and invested in something with a Copilot Plus badge, if you use recall or whatever, that sort of fires up the NPU. The only thing, I think even on here, I don't even think it works with these studio cameras. So it's just a bit of a waste of time currently. Maybe it'll come into itself later, but that's more of a Windows thing rather than a GPD thing. Have the ROG said Flow 13 with the 395 and battery does take a massive hit due to it. Not much of an on-the-go device. Been having to play with much lower TDP within the default 28 to get work done on the go. Yeah, interesting. That is really fascinating. So obviously they are just waiting and seeing there, I think, then, and just wondering whether that is the right thing for this type of device. Might well be right for a gaming handheld only. Have the framework 13, the I/O was a mixed bag. Anything other than USB-C negatively impacts suspended battery life. There is already more I/O in the Win Max 2 than the framework 13 can take. This is really interesting. Thanks for that, Fish, because that's what I've been thinking. I've been thinking like all they are is just USB-C ports. So why do I want to take up this much space in my machine for some extra USB ports? Well, okay, for a docked switch style control pad, yeah, maybe I could see that. The other thing a docked control pad would do is it would take these little buttons off the side and on the back, and it would put them into that that docked control pad. I wouldn't even mind seeing them hanging off the back and they still just slide out, maybe, but that would mean you weren't accidentally hitting it there. But yeah, you're right. I think I/O is an important thing, but I think that would be a nice additional thing that you could do. You could have extra inputs if you did have that docked system there, but they would come up with an interesting. They would come up with an interesting solution as well. Yeah, it's an interesting one there. I did wonder about running that. You could certainly have on your second SSD card, you could have a different operating system. Because it's all AMD as well, I think it might run quite well with the Steam OS. That's worth trying out as well. Panther Lake would make it much more attractive device for non-gamers. Intel would actually allow actual Thunderbolt, not USB 4, which seemed flawed. Yeah, I think Panther Lake. The more I thought about that this afternoon and evening, this afternoon still, the more I thought about Panther Lake, actually, I think that might make sense because everyone's saying, I haven't tried a Panther Lake apart from a little bit at a trade show. Everyone's saying that it's high performance at low power, so that's exactly what you want in a handheld or a tiny laptop. Up to 50-70 power, you're okay with, yeah, Thunderbolt 4. Much higher end due to transfer speed affect the performance, yeah. And I think that people will want the Oculink because we all like the idea, don't we, of plugging in an absolutely huge graphics card with a tiny laptop. So yeah, cool. The idea of the framework parts is if they were out there easily replaced, I think you could modularize that better with daughter boards internally. Yeah, an interesting one. I think they could certainly do a good job of that. Currently running CatchyOS on the 8840U Win Max 2, and it's great. I'm sure it is. Yes, that's one. Maybe tell me reasons why I would want to try that out. So the next question I've hinted at a little bit: should they go 395 plus, or just would a Win Max 2 2026? Would that just make sense to go 470, just the next generation? And I think what we've seen so far with the 470 is it's just a small uplift. It's just a refresh of this one, really. And there's nothing wrong with this currently. But that's, I think they're going to play probably a waiting game now. If they go now, they could release right now 395. It probably would feel like the same kind of laptop. Or they could wait for those 400 chips to really become available at their price point and do that. But I don't know. What do you think? Or just go the 385 route and just give that almost top 850S, just slightly, like say, slightly less cores for a handheld. Would that make sense? So the next thing, this is an interesting point, I think anyway. The PC GPD, they don't currently make simple mini PCs, and they don't currently make simple laptops. They only make gaming handhelds. The closest to a normal laptop they have has a dual screen, which I've seen some reviews of, and frankly, I think I would find that to be quite a nuisance, just a lot heavier really than a normal laptop, rather than it be sort of exclusively a really useful thing. But they do have that with this same processor, the HX370, and I'm sure that's quite good. Why don't they just make a normal laptop then? Well, I wonder whether that is just going to impinge on their sort of development partners, Geekom, a little bit too much. And why don't they actually put out, they're really popular at the minute, some mini PC style things. They could do really powerful ones quite easily, I'm sure. Maybe that's because they want to work with Geekom and they don't want to directly compete with them. So I wonder if that's why they might not do that. I wonder if that's why we might not see what I'm talking about, being maybe a 13.3 laptop, a little bit bigger, ordinary laptop, but still with that gamepad digital kind of branding and docked things as well. So yeah, maybe they'll do it, but I think they have to sort of not negotiate, but be quite politic with Geekom if they are still going to be working with them on actually getting their hardware right. Good question. Here we are. No Copilot. It's not Microsoft. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I am. As you get deeper into PCs, you do tend to think, well, let's look more into Linux and things. Yeah, absolutely. So the 388 is an 8-core CPU with 40-core GPU, best of world of both. And that certainly seems like the right point for a handheld. And the Max 400 series seems to be a rebadge only, no new tech. Yeah, I did notice that the Max 400 would just be a slight refresh. So I think if they were just to make a GPD Win Max 2 2026, I think just going with the 400 series chips makes sense. Slight uplift, not much of a muchness. I think that the 395 probably goes into a different category. I mean, and the question also is whether they're going to do anything at this point, whilst we have the RAM and storage kind of issues as well. So I don't think that thing about Geekom, it's not a real sort of world issue. It isn't a real, they don't have a business relationship per se. They're not owned by anyone. They're just working together on R&D, I think. But I think that they want to carry on. If they want to carry on working with each other, they don't want to step on each other's toes. So what do you think? So some scenarios basically. So what if the Max actually becomes a Strix Halo device? What if this isn't actually the Max? I don't know what they call it next. Maybe we're talking about not a GPD Win Max, but a GPD Win Ultra that's got a lot of the characteristics of this, got that full-size keyboard, some docked controllers, maybe a bigger internal battery to manage Strix Halo, even stronger cooling, even more ports maybe, still aimed at people like me, wanting to travel, wanting to get serious work done, but also can game on it. Or actually, do they stick with kind of scenario 2, I suppose, is they actually double down on this kind of docked ecosystem, and they stick with this. You feel the air coming out of that. It's a serious blower. It's nice though, because the base of it doesn't get hot. It's the back of it that gets hot. I have too many laptops where the base, gets too hot for it to actually sit on your lap. And this idea that this is handheld when you're on the sofa, plug it into an eGPU on the desk, that's really good. Stick with that. I think that is possibly, it's a bit of a no-brainer really for them. That's what they're selling really. So I would certainly look at that for them. Or do you actually think that GPD, maybe the next thing they should be doing is looking at sort of small form factor workstations? Should they actually do a GPD mini PC? Maybe a GPD mini PC could actually be, sorry, we just do 1 second. Thanks so much for being here and spending time with me on this live stream. I really enjoy engaging with you guys and answering your questions live. It's a massive support to me. Now, if you do decide that one of the devices that I review here on my channel is for you, then go ahead and check the links in the description, because when you make a purchase through YouTuber's affiliate links, you make it possible for us to keep making content for you. So yeah, if they actually make small form factor kind of workstations, could they keep the GPD branding and actually have, you know, maybe it's a small form factor PC that actually the small gamepad comes out of? You know, could it be something that maintains this really cool aesthetic, but still has this sort of mini PC vibe that's connected to all your peripheries and things like that as well with proper ports? Would you be interested in a mini PC from them, I wonder? And actually that kind of thing, would it be a kind of local AI box making even more use of the integrated RAM? So you can allocate RAM to, you can do that on the 395 chips as well. Allocate RAM to your graphics as well, so you can run things like local LLMs as well. Really cool, I think. Or you know, actually, is it really just stick with the handheld ones like that? I think those are the kind of questions. So I've a couple of questions for you. So firstly, if you if it was a 395 and it had to be even thicker than this to really get a proper battery in, would that be okay? So do you think that actually if you want a 395 plus, but to actually even increase the thickness from this, which is not a thin and light laptop, would that be acceptable? What do you think about OcuLink? Is that necessary for you, or is it just a bit of a, you know, interesting for people who like connections of kind of your computer nerds type people? If you're interested in, if you're the type of person that likes to plug in your GPU and run a benchmark when you get it and find out what your actual performance is OcuLink only for you, or is it actually a port for everyone that I think is actually useful? And lastly, should the Max try and be a replacement for a laptop, or should it just be the best kind of hybrid handheld? So I think maybe I've answered my own question just by talking it through, that really refresh the Max and keep it that same form factor that it is now, then go for an Ultra, which is that slightly bigger one, perhaps with some docked controllers as well. What do you guys think of all that? Okay, any more questions as well? I've kind of talked myself into having a sore throat, but I'm going to come back later on as well and talk about some e-ink things, talk about some different screen technology and some writing on that, because that's another focus for this channel. So I can't wait to do that later on as well. I feel a device like this are more like a collector's item because they're pretty powerful. There are pretty powerful portable 14-inch laptops that are pretty powerful handheld gaming PCs nowadays. So this is just like a bit of a novelty, isn't it? And I did wonder that. One of the things I started the whole stream with was talking about my long-term thoughts, and I did wonder, would it just be that actually I really wanted this, it's really cool, and actually after the novelty wears off, will I continue to use it? And even though now I have those other things covered, the big desktop PC with lots of power, I've built a new one of them since buying this, and that's been covered, and thin and light laptops to use if I need to around the house, I still find myself going for this for lots of different use cases. And if I'm thinking, oh, I'm going out of the house, I've got a little bit of work to do, this is certainly what I'll chuck in my bag. Very niche. We're in a lull between technologies and the AI Max and new Panther Lake chips at the start of some really cool ultralight portables. Yeah, that's fascinating point. Yeah, I think Panther Lake could be a no-brainer then. So, okay, GPD, what you need, I think we've decided. You need a high refresh rate display. That's definitely most wanted. You need to solve the internal battery situation, whether that's by going for a more serious internal battery, a modular battery, or by going for something like Panther Lake. Would be a really cool thing to do. I don't really like the barrel pin in the Win 5. I think that's felt a little bit janky there as well. I think the 388 chip was, if you're going to go down the AI Max route, was the sensible one. 8 cores and the full fat iGPU. And OcuLink, I think we like OcuLink. Keep that, certainly. It's on brand, isn't it? And I think that keeps it compatible with your very cool external GPU as well. And I think that, yeah, some kind of modular I/O would be a good way to go as well. I think you don't need the touchscreen particularly. Full-size keyboard, maybe a 12-inch Panther Lake job would be really good. And keep it cool, because GPD products really like it. I like it a lot. A couple more questions really quickly, and then I'm going to say thank you very much. Thanks so much for contributing so much to the live stream, you two especially, but lots of other people as well. A lot of the current gaming laptops have added complexity of having DGPUs and APUs, which consume a lot more power and add complexity, like the MUX switches. Yeah, so I did have, and I do still use it occasionally. I do have a PC which is MSI. I like it. This thing is funny. I get it out and I go, which is a 4070. It's a few years old now. Well, it's a first gen Core Ultra 7, and it's really nice. But I mean, look at the difference. It's a 16-inch laptop. It's worth just getting this back just to have a little look at that, because the difference is huge. You can really see in this view now why the smaller form factor actually appealed. But the other thing that I struggled with was the power consumption of it and the heat that's generated by this thing. So let's go ahead and pop them both up again. So this is the MSI, just sort of barely fits in there, 16-inch laptop. That's the GPD. Okay, so the difference is pretty large, really, isn't it? And the MSI is actually thinner than the GPD. It's not massively different, but it is thinner. And yeah, the MSI on paper should be the better laptop for what I do, really, because you've got Core Ultra 7, good processor, 4070D GPU, good GPU, but I just end up not using it. You know, big old keyboard. It's not actually as nice a keyboard, I personally think. Big old trackpad, but in a way, I'd rather have that setup that I had before, where you've actually got room for a mouse just next door to that on your little on your little laptop portable desk thing. You know, for certain things, I think the mouse is better. I don't like to use this for long periods, and it just gets way too hot. So you can't. It's a portable desktop. It's not. You know, this whole area gets absolutely roasty toasty. And just you look at the difference in the size of those vents compared to the vents on here. You're just able to get rid of much more heat from this thing. I actually just think this is a better design. And yeah, I really do like this, and I have actually used this. The Arc GPU is good in it, as one idea I've had for a video recently. The Arc GPU, the iGPU is good, and it's really good that Windows is actually good enough now to switch between iGPU, dedicated GPU, and even you can have the third. You can have the Thunderbolt 4 into the little eGPU as well. You know, and you can actually do that. You can actually say, right, let's have media encoder. Let's have that running on the eGPU. Let's have the dedicated GPU running Premiere itself and being responsible for scrubbing through the timeline. And let's finally have the iGPU. Let's have that just managing Photoshop, which will do just fine. It's got Arc graphics in it. So, you know, actually that's a viable kind of workflow. So you can just ascribe which program uses which GPU in the settings of Windows. And I mean, does that make sense, or is that just a complete faff? Is it actually just better just to have an overall more powerful graphics card rather than having multiples of them? I don't know. But I do think it's really interesting that I presumed, because I've always had big 16, 17-inch laptops in the past. I love having a number pad. It does help me for lots of reasons. When I work, you know, I've hardly gamed on this, and I found when it did, I don't know whether it's just because it's that 40 series, it actually had some issues with screen tearing and some funny blips and things in a couple of the games I was playing. It went sort of green frames randomly pop up in the middle of games. But you know, I just haven't used this anywhere near as much, but it is a more sensible laptop in a lot of ways. But it's not the one I reach for. It's not the one I think to myself, yeah, I'm going to do a thing on Windows. I'm not going, you know, I'm going to take a laptop with me. I'm much less likely to think to myself, I'll take this giant thing with me. Let's pop it back over here. I'm much more likely to pop the GPD back in its little case, shove that into the daddy bag or whichever bag I'm carrying, and there we go. Yeah, cool. I've got that one and the last bit. The longest time, way back, I backed the Win 2 mini laptop, DS looking device, and I loved it. Managed to play games and actually get work done on the go. Massive attention grab. Yeah, it's really cool, isn't it? So more power to GPD. Let's keep on innovating, keep doing interesting things. Also, let's have something a bit more sensible as well. let's have a normal 13-inch laptop from you, because you do it really well. Proper ports, maybe some docked handhelds, some controllers, and that would be really awesome. All right, thanks so much for your time. I will see some of you later on, I'm sure, and thanks very much for being here, and thanks for geeking out with GPD with me today. Cheers.